Do you think that since you've dived deep into endocrinology, and earlier you mentioned hypertension that's caused by hormonal imbalances and all, do you think that doctors don't understand enough about endocrinology?
It's a very well, fortunately, a lot of these chronic endocrine diseases are, uh, studied across different specialties of medicine, from gynecology all the way to primary care and internal medicine. But a lot of endocrine diseases, which is also true about most chronic diseases, is they go unnoticed for many years. So I'll give you the example of diabetes. Oftentimes by the time someone receives the diagnosis of diabetes, they probably had it for over a decade, because disease moves from a wellness state to a pre-diagnostic stage to a diagnostic stage over years. And current diagnostic thresholds don't catch disease very early. And that's why we need better biomarkers, likely through a multi-omic approach, which is using different biological data from so many different sources to try to phenotype the continuum between wellness and illness sooner than later. And it is that gap between the pre-morbid and the morbid stage, morbid being the diagnostic stage, is what I'm very much interested in right now, uncovering. But yes, most endocrine diseases are very challenging. They require a multi-tier diagnostic pathway, typically starting with a screening biomarker, followed by a confirmatory biomarker, followed by expertise and understanding how to interpret both the screening and the diagnostic testing, followed by imaging and in some instances diagnostic dilemmas and gray zones and referrals to multi-specialists and so on. Some of these conditions are not very straightforward, and that's why being a general endocrinologist today even may not be sufficient in uncovering the nuances of some of these endocrine diseases. And some endocrinologists are also now pursuing subspecialties in endocrinology to focus on one particular organ and to become a master of diagnosis of that particular organ. So I was fortunate to train with mentors that focused on the pituitary and the adrenal glands. And that gave me, especially during my NIH training, an opportunity to really see from their lens how they go about, sort of working up an individual with these both common and some rare instances of diseases from these organs.
You know, what you mentioned was so interesting because it just triggered some memories from my clinical days. I did work in a clinic for a long time, a community clinic, and you see a lot of hypertensive cases, and they can be really young, like in their 30s. And we try to work them up, but we don't do biomarkers. We just do all the basic blood works, and we can't find anything and call it essential hypertension and then just treat them with medication. And that was it.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of those cases. So we helped uncover hormonal cause of hypertension in our specialized clinic in the NIH during my training, and then when I took on the program director role of the endocrine fellowship program, of about 300 different primary aldosteronism cases. And primary aldosteronism is an endocrine disorder due to dysregulation of aldosterone secretion from the adrenal gland that leads to water and sodium retention that's renin independent, and that leads to a secondary cause of hypertension. It turns out that it's super common. Anywhere from 20 to 30% of patients with hypertension may have an underlying, mineralocorticoid excess condition, including primary aldosteronism. It is truly a spectrum. And if we use the diagnostic threshold set by guidelines today for primary aldosteronism, you'd miss most of the sort of milder cases of primary aldosteronism. So that requires a hypertension specialist or an endocrinologist with expertise and dedication to this particular condition to tease out this condition in a patient with hypertension. So what I do in sort of our existing precision health clinics is to screen everybody independent of their premorbid status for primary aldosteronism, because I want to detect and uncover this condition very early. And so I don't set barriers to entry for screening and diagnosing primary aldosteronism, because I've seen that spectrum from mild cases all the way to severe cases. And as a hypertension specialist, I really want to take the opportunity, especially in someone with hypertension, independent of the degree of hypertension, to screen for this condition. And we can go on and on about different endocrine related cases that have this sort of mild to severe disease continuum, similar to what I mentioned earlier, which is that wellness to disease continuum. And what I'm interested right now as I ventured into the wellness and longevity space in building these clinical programs and technologies to help scale proactive personalized healthcare services, is to try to uncover biomarkers and diseases very early on in that sort of wellness spectrum before they hit that diagnostic threshold and become a full-blown disease, because by then it might have been too late.
Mark your calendar for Disruptive Doctors annual conference and exhibition. It's happening the 20th and 21st of September. This conference isn't about fitting into label. It's about expanding what is possible in healthcare and reimagining the doctor's role in it. This is where forward-thinking doctors come together to drive real change in healthcare. For those who refuse to settle, this flagship event brings together doctors from diverse backgrounds to explore fresh approaches, share ideas, and connect with a community of doctors to impact healthcare differently. Remember to get your tickets on our website at disruptive-doctors.com/conference 2025.
Join Disruptive Doctors. Oh, Disruptive Doctors. Impact